Lawyer Sophia gently slid the voice recorder across the table. Mr. Berger, even if the most authoritative institution in Zurich has issued the highest confirmation standard, you still insist on questioning the parentage of your daughter, don't you? He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, his tone arrogant. Ms. Lawyer, are you questioning a scientific professional's basic understanding of probability and margin of error? That divorce lawsuit, from the very beginning, was a confrontation between science and conscience. At the 2013 Vienna Film Festival gala dinner, the air was filled with champagne bubbles and soft laughter. The crystal chandelier shattered the light into 1,000 fragments, which fell on Isabella Corsteyer's floor-length silver mermaid gown. At 32, she had just won the Best Actress award for Tears of Venice, and praise surrounded her like a warm current. Yet when her fingertips touched the cold base of the trophy, she felt an inexplicable sense of emptiness, as if the grand feast would soon come to an end. Ms. Corsteyer, allow me to express my admiration, a voice said. In that rooftop scene, the second the moonlight fell on your left eyelashes, what was reflected in your pupils was not just the water of Venice, but the sense of rootlessness that haunted the character throughout her life. The angle of incidence of the light was approximately 45 degrees, and the camera was positioned to your right. Capturing that frame required extremely precise timing and the actor's absolute control over micro-expressions. This is not just art, it is the perfect combination of precise calculation and emotional outbursts. The voice came from her side, deep and tinged with a rigorous German accent, yet it accurately tapped into the core secret behind her character portrayal. Isabella froze slightly and turned her head. Elias Berger stood in the dappled shadows of the lights. His eyes behind the gold-rimmed glasses were as calm as a measuring instrument, yet filled with intellectual admiration. He handed her a glass of warm water, replacing the champagne she had barely touched. Alcohol impairs neural sharpness. Warm water is more suitable for your tiredness tonight. This unique form of admiration, cold and rational, was like a special key that unexpectedly unlocked the door to Isabella's emotional heart. She was used to being praised for her emotional beauty, but for the first time, someone affirmed her value in such a concrete way, using a language that was completely unfamiliar and rooted in absolute rationality. Science explores the truth of matter, while art captures the truth of emotions. In essence, we are both seekers, he said. His gaze was scrutinizing yet not offensive. And you, Ms. Corsteyer, are the most perfect catalyst for emotional chemical reactions I have ever seen. The hustle and bustle of the dinner faded into background noise. The illusion of being truly understood, mixed with a natural admiration for high IQ elites, seeped into her limbs like a warm current. She overlooked the coldness hidden in his scrutinizing gaze, the kind of coldness that bordered on evaluating an object. At that time, she did not know that some encounters are not gifts from fate, but the initial condition setting for a meticulously designed chemical reaction. The castle at the foot of the Alps looked like a postcard scene. In July 2014, their wedding was held here. Media cameras swarmed around this talented couple. Isabella wore a custom-made wedding dress from her own studio, inlaid with hundreds of handcrafted pearls. The warm luster of the pearls reflected her bright smile. The pearl brooch was a family heirloom from her grandmother. When her mother gave it to her, she had said, "It guarded us through the hardest days, and it will bring you the most peaceful happiness too." She had subtly pinned it to the bodice of her wedding dress, seeing it as a beautiful wish for her new life. In front of the cameras, Elias held her hand, his lips curved in a perfectly measured smile. But off-camera, when Isabella gently reminded him that it was time to cut the wedding cake together, he glanced at his watch. "I'm sorry, Isabella. There's an urgent cross-border video conference from Berlin about next-generation sensing technology I have to attend. You know, this is crucial to the progress of the entire project." His excuse was airtight. "But this is our..." Her words trailed off before she could finish. He had already nodded slightly and turned to leave, leaving her standing alone in front of the huge, ornately decorated cake. The light refracted by the champagne tower made her dizzy. The cloying sweetness of the cake mixed with the faint mustiness of the castle's moss, and an inexplicable tightness rose in her throat. Her best friend, Camilla Rossi, stepped forward quietly and handed her a glass of water. "Honey, are you okay? He seems really busy." Camilla frowned, her sharp gaze sweeping over the direction Elias had left. Isabella forced a smile. "He's just very career-driven. It's fine, scientists always keep time to the second." She tried to convince Camilla, but it felt more like she was trying to convince herself. Unconsciously, her palm tightened around the pearl brooch, and the cold metal setting dug into her skin. After the wedding, they settled in a spacious and elegant apartment in the 16th arrondissement of Paris. Elias remained as busy as ever. Isabella slowed down her acting career and began to look forward to having a child. In early 2015, her wish came true, she was pregnant. After the initial joy came the torment of morning sickness and the growing emotional distance between her and Elias. One winter night, cold rain fell over Paris. Isabella, suffering from pregnancy-induced insomnia, suddenly craved cherries from Vienna. She sent a message to Elias, who was still working in his study. The message went unanswered. Half an hour later, she got up to get a glass of water in the living room. The study door was slightly ajar, spilling light and the sound of Elias's voice, lowered, yet clear. She approached quietly and saw him on a video call in front of his computer screen, a relaxed, calculating smile on his lips, a smile she rarely saw. "Marriage? Oh, it's just a necessary social procedure. A bit of a hassle, but settling down is good for my image. Besides, Isabella's income and savings are really good, they've relieved a lot of pressure for me. You see that new spectral analysis equipment I bought? That's all thanks to." Isabella couldn't hear the rest. Her ears buzzed, and a cold hand seemed to clamp tightly around her heart, squeezing the breath out of her. She stepped back unconsciously, her shoulder hitting the cold corridor wall, sending a shiver through her. The soft pillow she had prepared for her pregnancy was in her hand. She gripped the velvet cover tightly without realizing it. She turned and stumbled back to the bedroom. The cold rain tapped against the window panes. For the first time, as she touched her slightly swollen belly, she felt a deep, icy fear. On the nightstand, the pearl brooch lay quietly in a velvet box. Its warm luster looked dim in the dim light, and their peaceful happiness, it symbolized, felt like a distant joke. During a prenatal checkup, Dr. Lena Cohen, an endocrinologist, noticed Isabella's unusual anxiety. "Ms. Costeyer, your physical indicators are mostly normal, but your emotional state during pregnancy is very important for the baby's development. You need to pay more attention to your own feelings." Dr. Lehner's tone was gentle. Isabella forced a smile, her fingertips unconsciously brushing the cold leather edge of the examination table. "I'm fine. Just a little tired." She was used to maintaining her dignity, unwilling to reveal even a hint of her distress to others. That dignity was like a transparent cocoon, wrapping her tightly. In September 2015, in a private hospital in London, the delivery room was filled with a mix of disinfectant and faint blood. After a difficult labor, Isabella gave birth to her daughter, Lily. Exhausted, she looked expectantly toward the ward door. Elias arrived. He was wearing a crisp shirt, as if he had just come from the laboratory. His clothes carried a faint, cold scent of metal and chemicals. He walked to the cradle, looked down at the wrinkled little baby, and his eyes were as indifferent as if he were observing an experimental sample. "She's healthy," Isabella said weakly, her voice tinged with pleading. "Would you like to hold her?" Elias frowned. A newborn's spine is fragile, holding her requires professional training. Besides, he paused, his gaze sweeping over Isabella's pale, tired face. "We'll talk about holding her when she looks more like a burger." That sentence was like an ice-cold dagger, piercing the softest part of Isabella's hopes. The color drained from her face instantly, and tears welled up unexpectedly, falling hot onto Lily's soft swaddle and leaving a small dark wet mark. The saltiness of that tear became the most unforgettable sensory memory of her daughter's birth. Lily's birth did nothing to ease their relationship. Even when Lily could clearly say "pupper" at 8 months old, Elias never held her. At family gatherings, he would say to his sister Martha in front of everyone, look at this child's hair color and eye color, they don't seem to match the Berger family's features. Martha retorted on the spot. Elias. She's just a baby, how can you judge based on her appearance? You're her father. Elias only gave her a cold glance and said no more. That silence was more suffocating than an argument. Financially, Elias remained invisible. The mortgage for the Paris apartment, household expenses, Lily's early education fees, and even the living allowance he regularly demanded each month, all were covered by Isabella's acting income and her premarital savings. His excuses were always high-sounding. She even discovered that when he claimed to be short on funds, he had bought himself a limited edition sports car. The emotional cold violence was even more prolonged. In her third trimester, Isabella needed to control her diet. Yet Elias would often eat ice cream and chocolate in front of her, kindly reminding her, for the baby's sake, patience is a virtue. This is a scientific recommendation. He frequently mentioned genetic verification and certainty of blood relations, and even when she was at her worst with postpartum depression, he placed a brochure from a paternity testing center on her nightstand, under the pearl brooch. The brooch, now tucked deep in a drawer, had gone from a symbol of hope to a silent mockery. For Lily's sake, and to prove my innocence, let's do the test. Finally, Isabella heard her own dry voice say those words. At that moment, she felt like a prisoner forced to prove her innocence. In March 2023, at Zurich's authoritative genetic testing center, the air smelled of pungent disinfectant. When the cold cotton swab brushed the inside of Lily's cheek, the child's uncomfortable cries pierced Isabella's heart. Elias kept a cold face throughout the process. The result of the report was clear and unambiguous: probability of paternity, 99.99%. Isabella handed him the report, her fingers trembling slightly. Elias glanced at the conclusion page, his eyes showed no flicker of emotion, instead, a near-paranoid sneer crossed his face. 99.99%. He looked at Isabella, his tone calm. In the field of science, a 0.001% uncertainty is enough to invalidate the entire conclusion. Margins of error always exist. Sophia Lemay, the lawyer standing beside Isabella, calmly turned on the voice recorder. Mr. Berger, are you saying that even with the highest standard report from the Zurich Center, you still have doubts? Is your doubt based on evidence, or on a subjective refusal to admit the truth? Elias's sharp gaze stabbed at Sophia. Ms. Lawyer, are you questioning the professional judgment of a scientific practitioner? What I am questioning is your responsibility and conscience as a father, Sophia replied, unflinching. She placed a hand on Isabella's cold, trembling arm. In the car back to Paris, Isabella looked out at the scenery, so beautiful it felt unreal, yet she felt cold to the bone. Time became thick and slow, and every second felt like struggling in cold glue. His words, a 0.001% margin of error, played on a loop in her mind. She finally understood. Some doubts have nothing to do with facts, they are only related to the darkness and selfishness deep in a person's heart. He clung to that 0.001% not for the truth, but for an excuse to hurt her wantonly. In the spring of 2023, Isabella filed for divorce. The battle began. Elias adopted a strategy of delaying. He rejected her request twice, dragged his feet on submitting proof of assets, and forged a list of joint debts. The long tug-of-war lasted 21 months. During the hearing on child support, he once again denied paternity in court. When the judge proposed a third paternity test, he refused, citing interference with scientific research. Later, Sophia learned that he had complained privately, "Why should I pay huge sums for someone else's child?" During the divorce proceedings, his emotional manipulation became bizarre. He would send late-night messages saying he missed Lily, then block her the next morning. He sent expensive toys for Lily's birthday, but demanded a 10-minute thank you video. Otherwise, I'll assume the gift wasn't delivered. This unpredictability made Isabella feel a creepy sense of psychological harassment. She refused, donated the toys, and replied, "Please stop this schizophrenic harassment." The long-term stress broke her health. She began to gain weight inexplicably, suffer from edema, and lose her hair. Dr. Lena's diagnosis was heartbreaking: Cushing's syndrome, an endocrine disorder caused by prolonged stress. "Your body is bearing the weight of these emotions for you," Dr. Lena said, looking at the test results, her tone heavy. "It's sending you a warning. You must truly break away from that source of stress." Isabella stood in the cold light of the hospital corridor, holding the diagnosis report. The paper was rough and cold. She felt a bone-deep tiredness and absurdity. The dignity she had struggled to maintain, the fight she had endured with gritted teeth, all of it had finally been laid bare by her body. The house without him was as empty as a grand ice cellar, and a cold draft always howled through her heart. Her experience caught the attention of Anna Peterson, a social affairs journalist. Instead of chasing gossip, Anna delved into analyzing the abuse of scientific discourse power, the invisible violence of financial control, and the powerlessness of the judicial system in the case. Her report, "When Science Becomes a Weapon of Harm," sparked widespread public discussion. On the day the report was published, Isabella sat on the carpet in her empty living room and read it word by word. The article had no sensationalism, only calm facts and analysis, but for the first time, she felt that her pain was seen and understood. It was no longer a silent whimper she hid away in a corner. Anna wrote in the article, "Judicial procedures are supposed to protect the vulnerable, but in cases like this, the victim often struggles alone in a quagmire of rules." This sentence was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, sending complex ripples through her heart. She was no longer alone.